In the year 1347, a silent killer arrived in Europe. Within just a few years, it would wipe out nearly half the continent's population. People called it the Great Pestilence. Today, we know it as the Black Death. What if almost half the people you know suddenly vanished within a few short years? This was the terrifying reality in the 14th century, when the Black Death swept through Europe. The streets were empty. The air smelled of death. Whole families disappeared overnight, between 1347 and 1351. Europe faced one of the deadliest pandemics in human history, the Black Death. Before we begin, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit the bell icon so you never miss our history documentaries. And if you have any extra knowledge or thoughts, share them in the comments. We love learning from you too. The Black Death was a deadly plague that hit Europe from 1346 to 1353. It killed up to 50 million people, about half of Europe's population at the time. The disease was caused by a bacterium called Yersinia pestis, spread by fleas and through the air. This event had major effects on Europe's population, economy, and culture. It marked the start of the second big plague outbreak. Studies show the bacteria appeared around 7,000 years ago, with flea-spread versions emerging about 3,800 years ago. Some evidence points to Central Asia, China, the Middle East, or Europe as possible starting places. The plague likely entered Europe in 1347 during a siege in Crimea, and spread via fleas on rats traveling on ships. Once ashore, it spread quickly between people through the air, which explains how fast it moved inland. The Black Death was Europe's second major disaster in the late Middle Ages after a severe famine from 1315 to 1317. It killed between 30% and 60% of Europeans and about 1/3 of people in the Middle East. The plague kept returning over time, and Europe's population didn't recover to its previous size until the 1500s. Plague outbreaks continued worldwide until the early 1800s. Plague first infected people in Europe and Asia during the late Neolithic Early Bronze Age. In 2018, evidence was found in an ancient Swedish tomb, which might be linked to the Neolithic decline. Around 3000 BCE, when European populations dropped significantly, this form of Y. pestis may have been different from later types. With flea-transmitted bubonic plague first seen in Bronze Age remains near Samara. Plague appeared in the Roman Empire before Emperor Trajan's time, about 6 centuries before it reached Pelusium during Justinian I's reign. Y. pestis caused the plague of Justinian, 541 to 549 CE, which had recurrences until 750 CE. This event is known as the First Plague Pandemic. Hygiene was largely overlooked until the 19th century, when the germ theory of disease emerged. Before this realization, streets were often dirty and unsanitary, with live animals and human waste contributing to the spread of contagious diseases. By the early 14th century, the buildup of filth in urban Europe was so severe that cities in France and Italy began naming their streets after human waste. In medieval Paris, several streets had names inspired by merde, the French word for shit, including Rue Murdeau, Rue Murdelet, Rue Murdison, Rue des Murdens, and Rue Murdia, along with Rue du Pipi. In medieval London and Paris, pigs, cattle, chickens, geese, goats, and horses freely wandered the streets. Homeowners were expected to keep their front areas clean, including removing animal waste. But many residents neglected this responsibility. Blood from slaughtered animals flooded the streets, creating a foul and abominable sight for everyone living nearby. In much of medieval Europe, sanitation laws were quite basic, often requiring homeowners to shout "Look out below" 3 times before emptying their chamber pots into the street. The symptoms of the plague include a fever ranging from 38 to 41 degrees Celsius, 100 to 106 degrees Fahrenheit. Headaches, joint pain, nausea, vomiting, and a general feeling of illness. If left untreated, approximately 80% of those infected may die within 8 days. Historical accounts of the pandemic vary and are often unclear. One of the most recognized symptoms was the development of buboes, or gavociolos, in areas like the groin, neck, and armpits. These buboes would ooze pus and bleed when opened. This symptom was typically accompanied by a high fever and vomiting of blood. Most individuals succumbed to the illness between 2 to 7 days after becoming infected. Small freckle-like spots and rashes, possibly caused by flea bites, were also noted as potential signs of the plague. The Black Death, a disease caused by Y. pestis, killed between 75 million and 200 million people in Eurasia. A great variability in agricultural output before and after the pandemic, with high mortality in areas of Scandinavia, France, Western Germany, Greece, and Central Italy, but uninterrupted agricultural growth in Central and Eastern Europe, Iberia, and Ireland. The mortality rate varied widely by locality, with urban centers, with higher populations suffering longer periods of abnormal mortality. The Black Death killed 25 to 60% of Europe's population, with estimates ranging from 31% to 80%, based on poor nutritional conditions in the 14th century. Mass burials were necessary to address the overwhelming number of deaths, and the mortality rate was far greater than their worst 20th century outbreaks of Y. pestis plague. The disease spread rapidly, with nearly a third of the European population perished before any physicians or government authorities had time to reflect upon its origins. Black Death disproportionately impacted the poorest people, and those who were already in worse physical condition than their wealthiest citizens. However, in response to a subsequent labor shortage, wages skyrocketed along with the pandemic's population decline. Rents dropped in some areas. For example, rentals used to bring in £5 and now but £1. But because of the high rate of inflation, many workers, craftspeople, and artisans who only received money wages saw a decline in their actual incomes. In an attempt to retain tenants, landlords were also pressured to replace labor services with monetary rents. It became challenging to collect taxes and tithes, since the impoverished refused to pay the rich deceased's share because so many properties were vacant. The Black Death was more than just a plague. It reshaped societies, economies, and even faith. It left scars that lasted for centuries, reminding us how fragile human life can be in the face of unseen enemies. Though the Black Death ended centuries ago, its lessons still echo today. Pandemics remind us of our shared vulnerability, but also of our resilience, our ability to adapt and to survive. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this documentary, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more fascinating history stories.